Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to install the Concerto platform on the Microsoft Azure cloud. My name is Andrew Kingdon and I'm a psychometrician based in Sydney, Australia. So what is Concerto? Well, basically it's a free and open source platform for computer adaptive testing, and it's been created by the Psychometric Centre of the University of Cambridge. Essentially, it gives the statistical application R the HTML presentation capability needed to present test questions to examinees via the web. Or in other words, Concerto is a means of accessing R via the internet. Concerto is a new technology that is potentially very highly disruptive of the existing computer adaptive testing organisation, which mostly consists of several large organisations, be they public, private and not-for-profit. Now, these organisations tend to sell very expensive proprietary applications. Now, that is given several years of considerable investment and pioneering and trailblazing the whole field of computer adaptive testing, such that open source solutions can come along later. Now, these applications are also bundled with HTML authoring tools and item bank software and other such things because clients can find that kind of a package very, very attractive. However, the problem is that already compounds the considerable expense of a computer adaptive testing solution. A mature solution consists of anywhere between several $100,000 and several $1 million to obtain. It also has an inherent lack of flexibility for the client should the client choose to no longer accept that vendor's computer adaptive testing solution or it doesn't work out for them. The vendor then would take the HTML authoring tool and the item banking software and virtually leave the client with very little capability. So Concerto then comes along and changes all of that, and it changes that particular model quite severely, or it has the potential to anyway. Psychometrician or an individual psychometrician can now create, resource, and run his or her own computer adaptive testing system. So just to emphasise the point, Professor John Rust, who is the head of the Psychometric Centre of the University of Cambridge, recently stated that their primary CAT mission is the provision of open source software and other online resources that will enable ideas-rich but money-poor individuals around the world to move to the forefront of developments in the field, both pure and applied. In short, we are aiming for a revolution in CAT. So I would imagine that Cambridge and the Psychometric Centre has tapped into the spirit of the times with digital disruption, the notable example being Uber and its challenges to the taxi industry and the taxi cartels all around the world. We have jurisdictions that are struggling to try and regulate Uber and failing left, right and centre. So it remains to be seen whether or not Concerto has a similar effect upon the established computer adaptive testing industry. The intended audience for this tutorial is the professional psychometrician. I've assumed that the psychometrician has knowledge and considerable experience with item response theory simply because you cannot do computer adaptive testing with the Concerto platform without it. I don't even think you can do CAT without any sort of item response theory at all, whatever platform you use. Also, I've assumed the ability to program in R because simply you can't write test logic in Concerto without some sort of knowledge of R. The tutorial covers the following 7 points. First of all, we'll use Git Bash, OpenSSL, and PuTTyGen to create what's known as an X509 certificate or an SSL certificate, which contains the public key and a private key as well, such that we need these things to be able to access our server securely. We'll then set up a Linux or Ubuntu virtual machine on the Microsoft Azure cloud, Linux being an open source operating system and Ubuntu being probably the world's most popular distribution of that particular operating system. Now, I'm using the Microsoft Azure cloud purely and simply because that's what I've got access to and that's what I know. I'm not endorsing them at all. Of course, it is up to you to survey various cloud service providers and then make your choice accordingly to suit what is in your best interests. Now, hopefully, should you choose to go, say, with Amazon, most of the content of this tutorial will still remain relevant. Third, we'll have a look at the Secure Shell Applications PuTTY and WinSCP, which you'll need to access your server. And of course, citing those particular programs, I'm assuming that you're using a Windows machine. Now, WinSCP is particularly attractive and useful because once you access your server with it, it can actually provide a Windows kind of a GUI display for your Linux directory structure. So it ends up making your Linux machine look like you're navigating a Windows one. Now, what is very handy about it is that you can open up directories on your Linux virtual machine, and you can actually transfer files from your desktop into this virtual machine simply by using drag and drop. So it's a very, very handy application to have. Fourth, we'll look at the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. We need to install that stack upon our service purely and simply because Concerto requires these particular applications to run. Linux, of course, we would have already installed. Apache is probably the world's most used web server, and it is open source. MySQL has just celebrated 20 years of existence, and it is probably the world's most used open source and free database system. And PHP is a programming language that a lot of applications or web-based applications use. I understand that Facebook is a PHP platform. Concerto most definitely is, and the WordPress templates that you see, the very, very beautiful WordPress templates that are used for websites nowadays, are also PHP objects. We'll then install the R application and the required R packages. There are 4 packages which are needed by Concerto to run. We'll then look at installing Concerto and also creating and installing the Concerto R package. Now, if you're familiar with R, and I'm assuming that you are, the Concerto package is not available via the R CRAN. You actually have to make it on the server and install it there. Now, I assume that the Cambridge developers have done this purely and simply for the fact that it's very consistent with Concerto being an open source application. It means that prior to actually constructing the package, you can open it up, have a look at it, add functions, subtract functions, and kind of customize it so you can call in various features into your computer adaptive testing system, so should you wish to do this. So I think that's a rather neat feature of it. 7, we'll download and then run a simple computer adaptive test from the Concerto library that the community of Concerto users out there have put up for our benefit. So first of all, what we need to do is, you need to do really, is to install the following four open source applications: Git SEM or Git Bash, OpenSSL for Windows, PuTTY and WinSCP. Don't worry about them; they're all free. You don't have to pay for anything. Now you can go to those links and follow the instructions. They're fairly simple. However, with OpenSSL, I just thought we'd just navigate to this particular site, just so I can show you which one we really need. And if you're working from Windows machine, and I assume that you are, you need to download or click on that link that's right at the top there that ends in A Lite. If you run into troubles installing it, it's giving you a redistributables error prompt. Then simply click on the link underneath it, and that will redirect you to the Microsoft website in which you can download the appropriate material from there and install it, and then you should have no trouble installing OpenSSL. Now, if I were you, my recommendation would be to actually install the OpenSSL application directly onto the C drive, such that you've got a very short directory to write in Git Bash when it comes to time to actually creating the public and private keys. So let's go and do that right now. So I'll minimize this screen and keep it to the left here for your benefit. So we simply go to Git Bash, which is here. And to create the public and private keys, we just simply type these commands in: OpenSSL, REQ, X509. Forgive me, I'm a two-finger typist. Nodes. I'm going to call my private key key.key. You may wish to call it whatever you want. I'm going to call the certificate my cert.pem. So we need to create a PEM file. So before we proceed, I should bring these particular commands up for your benefit. My apologies for not displaying them earlier. Now we need to put in the path to the configuration file. So this is assuming that you have gone through and installed OpenSSL. In my case, it's this particular path. So I'm just going to check that. And now it is prompting us for some details to be put onto the public key, the one that we'll be loading, or the certificate, the one we'll be loading up to the server. So I'm going to type AU for Australia, New South Wales, because that's the state I live in, Sydney, similar reason, organisation name, Joe Blogs Testing, R&D, name, Andy, email address, no, we'll leave that. Okay, and it's gone ahead and created both the certificate and the private key, which on my machine is in this particular directory here. You can see my cert.pem and my private key.key. The only problem with that, of course, is that it is not a form that is recognized by PuTTY and WinSCP. So what we're going to have to do is type in another command into git bash to actually render it into a form which PuTTY and WinSCP will recognize. So we'll open up WinSCP, go to Tools, PuTTYgen, load up my private key underscore RSA. Don't confuse it with the other one that we've created. And then we're going to set a passphrase on top of that private key. Now that passphrase you'll need to record and write down, because you'll be prompted to put that in when we actually access our virtual machine via the SSH application we'll be using. And it also puts on another layer of security onto that private key. For example, say if your laptop gets stolen or you lose your particular key somehow and you might put it on USB or something, then you've actually got a fair chance of resisting a brute force attack should that stolen computer or whatever fall into the hands of a hacker. So let's do that. So open SSL. We type in my private key, or whatever you called it, .key, and out my private key underscore RSA. So make sure that you instead of a .key, you underscore RSA. And it has written that, and you can see in this particular directory here we have my private key underscore RSA, and that's the one that we need to load into PuTTY and WinSCP. So we go to Tools, run PuTTYgen, load, need to tell it to look for all files, and then load in the underscore RSA. Don't load in the other one. We click open and it says it's been successfully imported. So we can call that open SSH key, call it my cat key, and then we're prompted to put in a passphrase, which I'm going to have my space new space cat, all capital letters, space 2015. And then we click on save private key, and we'll call it, I'm going to put it straight into the directory in which the other keys are in. You can of course save it wherever you want. Call it my PuTTY. Just call it my PuTTY key. Save. And if we look into this particular directory structure, you can see my putty key in that ppk file format that putty and WinSCP will recognize. So having done that, now that we've set up the public and the private key, let's go ahead and create our server. So if you wish to go with Azure, type in Azure, click on that link, and you arrive at the Azure page. Now, if you haven't gone with Azure yet and you wish to try it out, you can actually have a free trial for a month. It goes for 4 weeks, obviously, and in Australia here you get $210 worth of credit, which is more than enough for us to be able to install a virtual machine, a server, and to install Concerto on it, and to do some research and development work upon that particular cat, should you continue with that. So if you go with Azure, we just simply click on Portal, and it will usually prompt you for a password to enter it. However, I've already set myself up with this. And you can see here that it has loaded up all the items that I currently have on the Azure account. Now, in order to set up a server, we need to install set up or create a virtual machine. So to do this, we simply click on New at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and it will prompt us to either quick create or from gallery. So simply we click on gallery, click on Ubuntu 14.04. Next. The release date, the latest release date is automatically highlighted right there. So you can choose other ones should you wish to do so. Then we have to call our virtual machine a particular name, and you're free to call it whatever you wish, but in this case we're going to call it My First Cat. Make sure you record that because you'll need it later. We'll click on Basic, 1 core so as to conserve credit. And we'll call this New Cat User, and make sure to record that as well because we'll need that in order to access our server later on. Now here we need to upload the .pem file that we created just a few minutes ago. So and we upload my cert.pem and open. And we click Next. Now it'll prompt us to create either a new cloud or select one if we already have an initial existing cloud service. And here it's prompting us for the region. I'm in Southeastern Australia, so of course I'll click Australia Southeast. You should make a selection based on your current geographic location. Storage account, no. Availability set, we don't have to worry about. The SSH endpoints, or being at port 22, both public and private, that is the usual SSH ports. Now, of course, if you are concerned about security, you can change those particular numbers to some other numbers, of course. However, for this, at this stage, we'll just leave them using the default SSH ports. And we'll just simply add the HTTP port so our virtual machine can access the web. We'll click Next and then Install. So as you can see, it is starting or provisioning, and so that should actually take a little time to do so. So whilst we're waiting for that, I'd like to go through just a couple of other points. To really get the best out of Concerto, it's really good to gain some knowledge of the following things. Linux, purely and simply because you will need to update and maintain your Linux server should you wish to continue exploring computer adaptive testing using Concerto. HTML and CSS are kind of needed in order to make sure that the web pages that Concerto presents actually have some sort of aesthetic value. The computer adaptive test that we'll be downloading later on hasn't got much in the way of CSS or any sort of aesthetic value at all, so a lot of work has to be done in order to present your items in something that's actually visually attractive. So these two particular languages should be something that you should learn. JavaScript and jQuery, they are very, very handy, so much for the purpose of basically making sure that any form submits have actually been validated. And by that, say, for example, if you've got multiple choice items on your particular computer adaptive test, then if a student hasn't selected any one of the four options, say A, B, C, or D, then when they go to hit the submit button, they actually get prompted with a prompt appearing on the web page saying, please select a particular answer. And that stops non-responses from being put into the Concerto database. So it's probably an idea that you get to learn some JavaScript and jQuery. If you're into presenting mathematics items and testing mathematical ability, then LaTeX is probably a good thing for you to learn as well. Being a psychometrician or applied statistician, you probably already know a little bit about LaTeX anyway. If you do wish to present mathematics items, then there are a couple of good JavaScript widgets by MathJax and MathQuill that you can actually put into Concerto, and they'll render any sort of mathematics items that you want to present to examinees very, very nicely indeed. Finally, some server query language for querying the databases. You'll need to actually write queries into your test logic in Concerto purely to extract information out from examinee databanks, also from item databanks, and also to append data to about students once they have completed the test. So their final theta value, the items that they correctly answered, the items that they incorrectly answered, and so forth. So you do need to learn a little bit of SQL in order to write an appropriate test logic for Concerto. Now, you might say, well, I'm not a developer, I'm a psychometrician, I'm not a server administrator either, and that's all well and good. You may have some friends that might be able to help you out with that, but it's probably in your interest, particularly if you are interested in computer adaptive testing with the Concerto framework, to learn some of these languages. And of course, the actual developing your own computer adaptive test, of course, is actually quite a strong incentive for you to be able to learn these languages. The Linux Foundation offers training courses. I think if you pay $99, you get a certificate to say that you can navigate your way around Linux. Code Academy on the web provides free courses in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and SQL and database manipulation can be obtained by various private training providers out there. So it's not as if you can't get the skills, and they would actually be of benefit to you. So let's check to see how our machine is provisioning. It is still provisioning. And now you can see that the virtual machine that we have created is now running. So let's enter into the dashboard to obtain some important information concerning our virtual machine. On the right hand side, you can see things as DNS name, public virtual IP address. Now, if you actually have some domain URLs already put aside at your domain registrar, you will need to point those particular URLs to that virtual IP address in order to be able to access the virtual machine by virtue of that URL. It also contains the SSH details given there, which is essentially the DNS name with the port number. So we'll minimize the screen there. And now we will navigate to PuTTY and access our virtual machine. Now we need to type the DNS name in, myfirstcat.cloudapp.net. And then we need to go down to connection to SSH and click on authorization. We need to click on browse, see users, and we need to navigate to that particular directory in which you save that key that we rendered into a form that could be recognized by PuTTY. And right at the bottom there, you can see my PuTTY key. Click on that, open it, and then click open. we're asked about a potential security breach. This is the first time we're accessing the server, and so this is why we're getting this particular prompt. In this case, we just click yes. Now we need to log in with the name new cat user, or whatever name that you selected earlier, which is the name of the virtual machine that you created or server that you created. So, and you can see it's actually authenticated with that my cat key dash key that we created earlier. So now we need to type in the passphrase, which in my case is my space new space cat 2015. So my new cat 2015. So now we've actually logged in to our new server. So the first thing that we need to do is in order to access the rcran on Ubuntu, we need to access the Ubuntu archives rather on the rcran. We need to put in what's known as the Michael Rutter key. So just to make this clear to you, we need to type in that key at the sudo prompt. Then we need to navigate to a particular directory in order to open up the sources.list file. Then we need to actually add an R repository there. And we also need to activate the trusty backports repositories. Now, trusty tar here is what Ubuntu 14.04 is referred to, so that's where the trusty comes from. So we need just to remove the hashtag or hash symbol or the pound symbol from that so we can activate the backports. Now, the reason for that is that some R packages and some R-based installations themselves require sometimes material from the backports repositories. So that's what we need to do. Now, we've just uploaded a very new version of Linux, a distribution rather of it. And so we probably don't need to run dist upgrade. However, we will get sudo app. We will use the update command, and we also will use the upgrade command, and then we'll reboot the system. So what we'll do is we'll just type in the key first of all. And it is imported and processed the Michael Rutter key such that we can now access the Ubuntu archives on the rcran. So next of all, we need to access that particular file. So cd ls is the command to list files within a particular directory in Linux. And we need to use an editor in order to access files within Linux, and I'm going to be using the editor Nano. There are other editors that you can use should you wish to do so. And we simply arrow down, and we have to uncomment these particular backport repositories. Then we arrow right down to the bottom, a couple of spaces, and then we add another one. We add the one for R. and I'm adding the rstudio.cran because it actually redirects to servers all over the world. Of course, there are various crans that you can find, or various mirrors that you can find on the web page, and you can select the one that is closest in geographical location to you should you choose to do so. Then to save what we have done, we simply press Ctrl-O and enter, and then Ctrl-X to actually exit the editor. So because this is a brand new, just recently released distribution version or distribution upgrade of Linux Ubuntu, we won't run that particular command. However, I will run sudo apt-get update and upgrade. Now that is done, we'll type upgrade. An upgrade may take some time. We click yes. And now sudo apt upgrade has finished executing. So simply all we have to do is to type sudo reboot. We can wait a little while before we log back into the system. Now, to save us from having to do this time and again, go looking for the private key to upload. We'll go straight to session here, and we'll click save session cat 101, or just simply cat, and click save. Now open. Okay, now we will install the LAMP stack, which is quite an easy thing to do. We simply type that command at the top. We then make sure that when we're in the process of installing the LAMP stack that we record the MySQL root user password somewhere. If you do not record that password somewhere and you forget it, then you'll be in all sorts of trouble. Then we'll run an application that contains a dependency needed by the MySQL package of R. Then we'll navigate our way into the MySQL shell prompt, and we will type in two things required by Concerto. These being to grant all privileges on new cat user, and secondly to create the cat database, the cat master database for the Concerto application, and in this case we'll call it cat data. Then we'll simply just exit the MySQL prompt, and that will complete installing the LAMP stack. So at our prompt, simply type sudo apt get install lamp server dash server with caret. And this may take a little time to execute. We click yes whenever we're prompted in regards to the new installation requiring certain archive space or disk space. We always click yes. Call this cat 101, cat 101. Now please write that password down somewhere, otherwise you'll be in trouble if you don't. Now the LAMP stack has finished installing, we need to access it. So we simply type in MySQL, username is root space -p. This will prompt us for the password, which is the one that you just recently typed in, which will be cat 101. And now we're in the MySQL shell. So the first thing to do will be to grant all privileges onto new cat user. So grant all root privileges onto that user. And as you can see, the query has executed properly and has been accepted. So now we go on to create the master database that Concerto requires. And in this case, we'll call it cat data. Oh, apologies. And that query has also been accepted, and we simply type exit to exit the MySQL shell. Now we also install this dependency for the R MySQL package. And this may take a little bit of time. And now that has installed. So just a little bit of server housekeeping. We need to navigate to the main Apache configuration file and enter some text to remove a little bit of an annoying prompt that appears whilst we navigate through Linux. Then we need to do something that Concerto requires, and that is to open that php.ini file and open or turn short open tags on from off, and then we need to restart Apache. and we just simply arrow down. And we type server name, localhost, Control O to save, Control X to exit. Now we need to arrow down a little bit of the way. The short open tags command will appear just under language options here. So not far down, here we are. We type on, Control O to save, Control X to exit, and then we restart Apache. Right, and that is done. Now we'll install R. Simply, we will need to obtain both the RBase and the RBase dev version because we wish to use the install packages function within the R shell, and further information about that can be found at the Linux site of the R project homepage. Then we will open R and we'll install 4 packages which Concerto requires, these being Session, cat-R. cat-R is the actual application that provides the statistical engine for computer adaptive testing within the Concerto framework, RJSON, and then RMySQL. And this may also take some time. And now R has finished installing. So let us navigate to the R shell. And we simply type install.packages session, and it's prompting us to use a crayon mirror. We will type 1 for the RStudio and it has downloaded. Similarly for cat-R, JSON, MySQL. Take care with your capitalization because R is case sensitive. And is also installed a dependency DBI. So that is done. We simply quit the R shell by typing Q and parentheses. No, we do not wish to save the workplace image. And we arrive back at the Linux prompt. So, next thing to do is to actually install R and install the R package itself. So, first of all, we'll make a new directory under var/www. We will then navigate to that directory. We'll install the Concerto zip file from where it is located. We'll unzip that zip file to that particular directory. It will create furthermore other directories. We will navigate to that particular directory R, and then we will build the R package. You can also check it using that function. We won't do that because we already know that it's okay. And then we'll install it using that command. And then we will navigate to the R shell, and you call the command library concerto in parenthesis, and if everything is working okay, then we should see the concerto package load, and also all of its dependencies as well. So sudo mkdir, which is the make directory command in Ubuntu. And that is done. Now we will simply unzip that file. And that is also done. And we navigate, we'll clear the screen, navigate to navigated here, and we will now build the Concerto package. And the Concerto package is now built. So all we have to do is to install it. And it says that it has been successful and has completed. So we navigate to R and we type and we can see that it has loaded successfully, and it has also loaded its dependent packages. So it is installed successfully, and we just quit out of that. And no. So a little more server housekeeping. We just now navigate back into Apache again, and we set a particular configuration file such that the document root is changed to our new Concerto folder. We'll save that, and then we will go into the settings.php file in order to make the final changes needed to install Concerto onto our server. Control O to save, enter, and Control X, and sudo service Apache to restart rather. Okay. Just a sec. Oh, apologies, we've missed another slide. Yeah, we need to actually do a little more housekeeping in terms of setting some directory permissions up. Concerto needs these particular directories to be writable, and so hence we should do this now. We can actually go through that settings PHP file and make those particular changes. However, it's probably better just to do it in advance. Okay, so that is done. Clear screen. And we can go to the sudo nano. So, sorry, we can open up the settings PHP file using the sudo nano command. Now, within this particular file, we'll need to be very careful about the changes that we make. This $db master user is the name of our virtual machine that we created right at the very beginning, and which we actually then granted all options onto after we installed the LAMP stack. So this is the master username, which in our case is new cat user. So remember how you went into MySQL and granted root privileges onto new cat user? That's what you must enter here. DB password is cat101. And the database master name, which we created after we accorded root privileges to new cat user, is cat data, or whatever you called it. Now, we have DB users name prefix and DB users DB name prefix here. We'll leave these at Concerto, and it will use these then to create databases in which all the tables in Concerto containing the item bank and also the records concerning the individual examinee undertaking Concerto will be appended to. So when we go to write our SQL queries, we will probably be writing Concerto_1. So remember, whatever you enter here will be Concerto_1 or Concerto_2 if you granted it to another user. So far what we'll do is we'll save our changes by Control-O and Enter. We'll arrow down here. Path external is the actual public virtual IP address of the server that we created, or it could also be the URL that you are now pointing at that particular virtual IP address. So what we will do is we'll go back to our Azure, go back into Azure. And you can see here the public virtual IP address of the server. We'll type 191.239.181.83 and Control-O, Enter for that. Now we will arrow down. Don't need to change anything else under paths or R connection. We can leave that just as it is. We come to time zones here. I am in Sydney, Australia, so I'll simply write Australia/Sydney. And I'll leave everything else there. So I just might use that. And for this, I'm going to use CNCT __. I'm going to leave it at that. I want to make sure that the R users name prefix and R users group is different to the DB users name prefix and DB name prefix, the last two lines up under MySQL at the top of the screen. So I'll click Control-O, Enter, and Control-X. Now I believe it is time to actually exit and go and install Concerto. And we do this by simply copying over the public IP address into the browser. And what we'll type is setup. Now make sure before you hit enter that you have changed everything that you wanted to change in that settings.php file. So we hit enter. And you can see that it is now installing. And everything has passed, and so therefore we have now successfully installed the Concerto platform onto our Linux server. However, before we navigate onto the platform, there's just a little bit more server housekeeping to do. Right, we need to navigate to sudo V4.0.0, or V4.0 rather, to grant some privileges. And here we simply type www.data. I will show you the PowerPoint before we proceed. We need to type that Linux command sudo V4.0, and then we need to add the following 2 lines of text, and these correspond to the username and so forth that we had appended in those last settings within the settings.php file. So www space dash data, or for that particular rest of that line of text, and the same thing underneath, although referring to no passwords to a different directory. Then we do a sudo service restart. Then we go into cron tab, and then we type the following paths to 2 particular PHP files, and then we save that, and then we type the path to that autocomplete PHP file such that the function bar in Concerto works. Control O, enter, Control X. It's prompting us to choose a particular editor. I'm going to choose Nano, which is 2. Here we type star, space star, space star, space star. Make sure that you have 5 stars and make sure that you've spaced them. and this may also take some time. As you can see, that has finished executing. So now we return to the Concerto page, and we can exit our SSH. Now if you still have this window open, you click onto this link at the bottom left hand corner of the screen, or what you would do is you would go up here and type in CMS to actually get to the login panel. So what we'll do is we'll click on the link, and the default login and default password for the first time that you use Concerto is simply admin and admin. And here we have logged now into the Concerto platform. So we will navigate to users first, and we'll edit that. So we'll say, well, we'll just leave admin as admin. You may wish to change it to something else. We'll check that box to state we'll check the box to state that we will have a new password. And then we'll simply save. And we will be prompted to log in again. Now, navigate to tests, and we'll click on the download from online library. And you'll see here listed are a number of tests. We will load ID number 306, which is a simple computer adaptive test. Okay, and here is the test logic written in R code. Now, what we will need to do is we'll also need to download HTML templates for this particular cat, and that is also available from the online library. What we will download first is ID number 298, or start. List of available objects. You can see start has the ID of 1, which will become very important in just a moment. Then we will download question, which is ID 299. And then we will download result, which is ID 300. Now we'll navigate to tables as well. We will first of all download ID 301, the item bank. And then we will download item 302, responses. Now that we have downloaded both the HTML templates and the tables, we'll go to a list of available objects here so we can see the numbers. We have IDs 1, 2, and 3. So now we go into the R code for the actual cat test, and then we must change on line 5 where we have the command concerto.template.show. Template ID is recorded here as 10, so we must change it to 1. Now, we then arrow down to line 8, beginning with result 2, and we change that SQL, instead of querying that table cd._3 to concerto_1. So basically that SQL is commanding a query to select all fields from the item bank table of database concerto_1. We then arrow down to line 22 and we go to template ID. This is the item template ID, and we enter 2. Then we go down to 26 and we change that database name to Concerto1 or Concerto_1 to be more precise. My apologies. Then we arrow right down to the very last line of code, line 28 I believe it to be, and we change that ID number to 3, which gives us the ID number for the HTML template responsible for results, or presentation of results rather. So now that we have made those particular changes, actually there's one more that I wish to make. You'll see on line 18 that for loop there has a statement of j in 1 to 20. So it is basically administering what is known as a fixed length computer adaptive test of 20 items. You may wish to change this. I think I would like to change it to an object of test length, and I'll arrow up, right up to the top, and enter and go test_length. And for this demonstration, I think I'll have it as 5. Of course, a 5-item computer adaptive test is far too short for any computer adaptive test, and so I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. So I've just modified it, and that means you can come in too and do a similar modification and to any sort of a number of items that you wish. So I've just chosen 5. So we'll hit save and then OK. And go to advanced view here. We need to go to this little drop down box in the middle of the screen and select featured. And we can click save. And we'll arrow over to the right here with this begin button, and we can press begin to take us to the test. You'll see this little drop down menu. We'll select cat, and you'll see that the prompt is prompting you for your username. And here is the question. So the person who has authored this particular computer adaptive test has made it such that the first response here is always the key, or the correct answer. As you can see, 73 plus 10 equals 83. Now, this is what is known as a 2-parameter model test, because we have an item discrimination parameter value here with the A equals 1.444, and we also have an item difficulty parameter of B equals 0.2. So the person who's constructed this test has made it such that we can see what the item parameters are as we are actually undertaking the cat, which actually shows the adaptive nature of it. Now also too, you can see that this particular question here on this particular page is quite sparse. It's quite Spartan indeed. And so in order to actually present something that would be far more graphically or visually appealing rather to a particular examinee, you, the psychometrician, would have to do some work, or you can get a web developer friend of yours to do some work in order to author some HTML and CSS to make this interface look much prettier than what it currently is. However, this will suit the purposes of this particular demonstration. So if we get the item correct, what we should see is that B value go up, provided that there are sufficient number of items in the item bank. So we should see that difficulty value increase if I get this item right. Now, of course, being a 2-parameter test, it is not just the item difficulty which provides the maximum Fisher information, but also the discrimination too. And as you can see, because you got that item right, the B value has increased from 0.2 to 0.6 on the logistic scale, or logit scale rather. So we'll get the item wrong, and it should go down. And it does indeed go down. It goes down to negative 0.3. So that would be, in real life, a far easier item. We get it right again. It goes to 1.1. Right again, and it doesn't increase actually at that stage, maybe because there was not an item of appropriate difficulty in the item bank. So we'll get that one again, and we have now finished the test, and we'll see the student name written there and also the ability theta value. Now that theta value, of course, in a real educational context will not mean very much. As a psychometrician, you will understand that it is a measure on a logistic scale, or a logit scale rather. And should you want to present something like this to students, of course, you will need to do a lot more work on the user interface. So that essentially is Concerto and installed. However, there is one particular thing that I would like to do. Well, actually what I'll do is I'll show you first here with the way that Concerto is if we navigate to some certain folders here, say media, we'll come up with something here, an index. And I'm not sure if that's something we want, because you can actually navigate through that. Similarly, not for the CSS file, which we'll be keeping our CSS for our web pages, you can actually download and even see them. So that is probably something that is not very desirable at all. So what we need to do is we need to, well, actually for demonstration purposes, I will show this. So we'll just leave it there. So what we need to do is we need to go back into PuTTY here. New cat user. Oh dear, I've entered in the wrong password. New cat user, my new cat 15, and we now need to navigate to that main Apache configuration file. So I just have to jog my memory as to where it is located. Yes, under the etc directory. etc apache 2 ls, we have to then open using nano that particular file. Now if we arrow down here, now here we see directory /var/www. Underneath it will say options indexes follow symlinks. What we do is we delete the word indexes completely. Then we Control O, Enter, and Control X to have changed that configuration file, and then we restart Apache by sudo service apache to restart. Okay, now that is done, we can exit, can go back, and now we'll refresh this page to see whether or not it allows us back into the media folder. And now it hasn't. We are no longer able to index it. We're no longer able to browse it from the internet. Of course, you can log back into your virtual machine using WinSCP or also PuTTY, and you can navigate into those folders, of course, but you'll no longer be able to do so via a particular web browser. Thank you very much for watching this video tutorial. I hope that you have found it of benefit. My contact email address is there. I would like to hear from you should you have any questions, comments, or complaints or queries. So once again, thank you very much and good day.